Hello and welcome to the Swim Brief. This is another special USA Swimming Governance edition with Julie Bachman, the Executive Director of Gulf Swimming. Julie, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, Chris? Thank you for having me.
As I said, I'm okay, but I'll I'll do my best today. And then I'm also joined by ex-USA Swimming board member John Bradley. John, how are you?
Doing well. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, as I said, I'm doing okay. I guess Julie's maybe doing better than okay, or she just was being polite.
I got extra sleep this morning, so
That's true. You had a nice nap.
yeah, sleep goes a long way. We know that's part of your issue today. So
Yeah, so if I sound a little loopy, but you know what? I'm energized because we're here to talk about one of my favorite topics. We on this podcast, we previewed the USA Swimming Board election, so I want to talk about that a little bit. I want to briefly at least touch on the state of the sport document released by Tim Hinchey, and then at the end of the podcast, we're actually going to break news on this podcast about Mike Unger and USA Swimming. So stick around. Okay.
Is that kind of like breaking wind, or what is that?
No.
Kind of is, though.
Breaking news. Hopefully, by the time I get this podcast up, there will not be a news article about it, and I can claim that we said it here first. But stick around. I won't even timestamp it for you. You're just going to have to listen to the next 35 minutes or so, and then maybe we'll tell you what's going on with Mike Unger. USA Swimming, big news. So first, let's just talk about this board election. You know, we went over all the candidates, and you know, we talked about the vetting process, and understandably, it's pretty significant that none of the candidates that were vetted got on the board. It was the two nominations from the floor, Ira Klein and Clark Hammond, that ended up getting elected. John, my USA Swimming board expert.
I don't know if I call myself that, but
what does this mean?
Well, I think that it was in my opinion, I think it was a real vote of no confidence in the process. And I think it's a clear mandate that the people who were in that room who were casting those votes are dissatisfied with what they see. I think it's a referendum on leadership, and you can look at that as whether it's the volunteer group that currently is running that or a referendum on staff. And I have some thoughts about why that's happening as well.
Okay.
But clearly there is something that is bothering people, and they didn't trust the process. There were some great candidates who were vetted out. You know, you look at Jeanette, she's amazing and done incredible work. Cecil Gordon has done incredible work. You know, there were a lot of people there who legitimately wanted to help, but at the end of the day, the two people that everyone wanted were the two people that USA Swimming either didn't want, in the case of Ira Klein, who had been vetted and rejected, or Clark Hammond, who I don't believe went through the process and decided to do what he wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And that's not a slam on them. That's part of the reason why you have the ability to do that. But I do think that somebody needs to be saying, okay, why did this happen? And then on a secondary note, maybe the nominating committee should resign too, because they're the ones who put those candidates up.
Right.
And they were summarily rejected by the House. And at some point, you got to say, okay, what do we need to do to get our process in line? Are we doing it the right way? And maybe those people were set up to fail. I don't know. But something is wrong when this happens. And I think that that's what you have to do, is take a hard look at, okay, what's wrong here and how do you fix it?
Yeah. So I think that you point to, like, there's possibly two different referendums here, right? There's a referendum possibly on volunteer leadership. There's a referendum on staff. I think the volunteer leadership part of it is a little bit more obvious. You just sort of gone over that there was a vetting process, and then none of those vetted candidates got through. That's sort of a little bit more in your face, but speak a little bit more to what you said something in regards to staff. What do you see there?
Well, to me, and again, it's just my opinion, but
sure.
And
that's
Julie
all we
and I
want. That's
Julie
all we
and I
want
have
from
talked-
you, John. Just your opinion.
Julie and I have talked about this before, where, do we really know what we want? And do people really know what they want out of USA Swing? In staff's defense, I think that a lot of times when you are dealing with USA Swing or you're working on a project, you have people who maybe that's not their forte. Maybe you're working on something that's a domestic issue or a developmental issue, and you have somebody who has a lot of international experience helping you on it, and it's like their fourth priority. And everybody gets torqued off about it and says, well, this is, they're not supporting us or whatever. This is, it seems to me that and I don't know if this is because there isn't enough money or the lines aren't clear enough. I don't think there's a clarity of purpose for the different divisions of USA Swimming. And I think the things that affect the day-to-day operators of USA Swimming clubs or day-to-day participants in USA Swimming sanctioned programs or member programs, I don't think people understand who's doing what. And it creates a lot of frustration. Who are the developmental people at USA Swimming? What are they working on? What are we trying to do? What's the plan for the next 3 years? What are we doing about membership? What are we doing? And it's not there. I mean, and you don't even have to do that. I mean, the state of this, I'm looking at the document right now, the state of the sport report, there's some good stuff here, but you read USA Swimming exists for the growth and success of swimming in the United States. That's why we're all here. The board of directors believes we will achieve this vision with 1, competitive success at the international level, 2, resources to support athletes, coaches, and clubs, and 3, public engagement with swimming. And then 4, recognition as a best-in-class national governing body. Okay, what does any of that mean? And it's fleshed out a little bit, but I'm sorry. It just, these documents need to be out earlier, and then boots on the ground people who are dealing with it, they need to be expressing this constantly. This is part of our mission. This is part of what we're doing. This is how we're supporting the mission, all these things. And I think that because, again, everything gets so muddled because everybody's doing everything. And again, I don't know if it's because there aren't enough people or there's not enough money or a combination of both or whatever. I think it all adds up to what happened last week. And that's where we're going.
Yeah. Julie, what do you see in this?
Well, I'm getting on
while
my
you're
calculator.
texting somebody.
No, I'm not texting. I'm on my calculator because I want to have some supporting numbers. Okay, so I want to go back to the point that JB made where he said, do we know what we want? And when you join an organization, when you're a potential member or a member of an organization, I think you go into that with a certain number of expectations because you're actually writing a check or putting your credit card on the internet and paying for something.
Yep.
And I think you're also looking for whatever that organization is about to provide certain products and services. And you may not even really know what it is that you quote unquote want or need because you're looking for leadership from the membership organization that you've just joined. And what I see is thousands of swim clubs that don't really think much past the fact that they're affiliated with a shield and that they get insurance, but they don't really think much past that or have expectations. And USA Swimming's gotten away with this because I actually don't really know why. It's part of why I struggle with this. But
well, what's the alternative? I mean, that's probably why. What are you going to go to AAU? That's like everybody every few years goes, hey, we should just all go to AAU. And then like, why does that never happen? Because clearly it's probably not that easy to just go to AAU. So, you kind of, it's the only show.
It actually is, but we'll talk about that in another, maybe even today a little bit.
Okay.
but back to this referendum on leadership. I do, and we've talked about this, in previous episodes where it's like, the knight on the horse isn't coming to save us.
Right.
And that's really truly what I mean, because I don't really know what it is that they think they are providing resources to help clubs. I don't know what that is. Now, we do have some pretty awesome people in the field that are attempting to provide some level of support, right? And these are, like I said, these are good people in our sport. I think they're very good on the competition side. I think they understand how to, take a kid that's 8 and have good suggestions about how to organize your practices and your practice groups. But when on the other side, on the dry side, which is my obsession, for lack of a better word, but it pretty much is, there isn't anything. And that is really concerning to me. And it's concerning to me because we send, as Golf Swimming, about $720,000 a year to USA Swimming in membership fees. All of our teams receive insurance for that. I've talked to some folks and I've done some of my own research over the course of the last week. And this isn't like vaccine research, like this is actual research. Okay?
Yeah.
Let's be clear here. Okay. I hate the word research now, but
right.
I've actually spoken to professionals.
This is what the lunatics tell you. They go, do your research, before they tell you something completely wackadoodle. But okay, no.
It's like,
no, this we really mean it. Do your research. You did your research.
Is that insurance, if we decided as an entity, Golf Swimming, to go and get our own insurance, we're looking at maximum, and it depends on the amount of services you would want the insurance to cover, whether it's swim school and everything else or whatever, but we're looking at a max of between $12 and $15
per person.
If we didn't include the swim school, the number drops pretty significantly.
Yeah.
And we're not then in a insured group that includes California, where there's a lot of different kinds of issues, or we're in an insured group that's just specifically looking at our city. And I think there's savings there, right?
Sure.
So, and I'm on a bit of a tangent, but how am I doing my job as staff of a 501c3 as essentially the CEO if I am not looking at this very closely?
Yep. Because
there are alternatives. For instance, we have 472 kids out of the approximately 10,000 that qualified for a futures level or higher swim meet. I don't have the sectional numbers yet, but let's say you just throw in another 300 kids, okay? We're talking a small percentage of kids that actually, in theory, really need to be members of the current.
That attend a USA Swimming run meet.
Exactly. Yeah. Have the experience, the competency, the ability to do that. In the meantime, the remainder of our kids are supporting that group. And I don't know why we do it. And when I talk to our board or people within golf or outside, I get various different answers to this question. But I'm working on this. And I think it's a viable alternative. And I know of other LSCs. I'll name one because he said I could name him, as Van Donker's good at Wisconsin. There's a couple other very large LSCs in the Midwest. And
I'm sorry, Van used to be in some part of USA Swimming governance, if I'm not correct.
He was an athlete.
Yeah, he's an athlete.
Yeah,
right?
he's now a lawyer. He's graduated from law school and he's a lawyer.
I recruited Dan way back when, and again, as people know who listen to this podcast, that means we exchanged a few emails back in the day. I really wanted him to come to Georgia Tech, but
He's a good kid. He's not a kid, but he's a kid to me.
Right.
The reason I'm bringing this up is because this is another referendum.
Well, sorry, but what are these LSCs doing? You never said that part.
We're working on this.
Okay.
We're working on really understanding what it is we're paying for. Do we have to pay for this? Can we offer these services ourselves or as a group? Is it smart to proceed this way?
Right.
What we haven't gotten to the point, which is the biggest factor in this, is this what our coaches want? Because ultimately that is the most important thing. But there are some that are putting a lot of wind underneath my wings to continue to investigate this, right? And I think this is the ultimate referendum. And it is something that I don't want to do. And I take no pleasure in thinking that we would ever do something like this, because it is disruptive and risky. But at the same time, we have to do what's best for our membership.
Yeah.
And I'm not convinced right now. I'm feeling better about things at USA Swimming because of the Clark and Ira election, which could also be part of this conversation if we wanted to be. I talked to Clark on Monday. I'm feeling better about all this, but
you guys patched things up.
I think we did. He did listen to the podcast, so.
Oh boy. Yeah. All right.
I think he also called JB and said, "You now need to refer to me as Maverick." But anyway, so
no, Matlock.
Matlock. Okay, Matlock. Sorry. Anyway, I don't mean to I shouldn't say I don't mean it. I do mean it. I wanted to throw this out here today.
Okay.
Because I know I'm not the only one doing this. I know I'm not the only leader within our LSC organizations that are thinking this way. So.
Well, and just to back up what you're saying, I mean, I'm very curious to see a more detailed budget for USA Swimming. That's usually something that we get around this time of year. And I'm, one of, I think, a select few people that actually likes to sit down every year and scrutinize some of the lines in that. But, even looking at this pie chart that Hinchy presented in the state of the sport, there's some stuff that really stands out when you look at sources of revenue, and membership is 62%. That's right. Dwarfs every, the USOP, it's 4 times the funding that the US Olympic Committee gives to USA Swimming is membership revenue. Okay. So we are by far, as members, we are by far the ones making this ship sail. Okay.
And it's why we all should have a voice.
For sure.
And why we are a membership driven organization. And honestly, this is the first time I think in a while where the membership really spoke. And I don't have the history JB has on this, but I think, do you remember, JB, a time when there's been this much concern with a split really between membership and leadership?
The only thing I can think of that would qualify, and I think it was handled I think it was handled by staff actually pretty effectively and refined, was the new obligations for coaches regarding safe sport training the first time around, because there was a real schism there, and I don't think a lot of people understood kind of where this was all going and what it was. I think there was actually a cultural shift going on and people didn't realize it. So no, this is something different. There's also a separate piece on this, because unless I'm wrong about this, didn't we create a new membership category at this House of Delegates as well? And that's a new $30 membership fee for people who serve on swim club boards, people who are going to be meat marshals. And there's a couple of other people that fall into this framework. You know, are we doubling down on membership, or were these really necessary categories? And what's the money for? And I think maybe that's where,
Well, not to mention, was the committee even a part of the discussion for that?
yeah, I don't know if they were.
I don't know. I don't, they weren't. I know they weren't.
So
It wasn't brought to the committee.
I mean, that's a whole separate piece. If that's true, if that was not brought to the committee, then somebody's got some explaining to do. Because if that was just
Yeah.
pushed through, that's a real problem. And quite frankly, I would argue that it's disingenuous to the House of Delegates, and it's not right. You can't, if you want to be totally transparent, people have to have confidence in the systems and the checks and balances that exist so that the system can move forward. And if you're not fully informing the people who are, you know, pushing those buttons and bringing things to the floor, that's not right. So that's something I'd like to hear more about if in fact it happened.
Well, sorry, Chris,
Yep.
this just is an example, a small example, but there's hundreds of examples behind the scenes of volunteers in these positions, whether it's committee chairs or that are on the board, that I don't think challenge staff. They don't push back and say, hey, wait a second, what are we doing here? They don't ask questions. They don't, and I've sat in on a couple board meetings. I may be not as informed as most, but when you're talking about this $30 thing, you and I have a mutual friend, John, that's on that committee, who has even last night talked to me about this. And it was a surprise to her she didn't know about it. Okay. So, and she is a incredibly knowledgeable, long-term volunteer within USA Swimming. So, and she's very upset about it. And it's like, some of these things don't seem to be a big deal, or wouldn't seemingly seem to be a big deal, except for it adds up. And when we malign and disrespect our volunteers, what happens is staff's got a problem. They haven't done a good job of transparency and respect. I've talked to, officials that are upset, and, it's a lack of leadership, point blank. Where is the leadership?
This is what the point that I was going to make, and Julie, is that just listening to all this, I mean, what has always bothered me, probably more than anything, is through years of, from where I'm sitting, really poor leadership at the top of USA Swimming. I don't see any, I don't see any accountability coming from volunteers. When Chuck Wielgus was, doing disastrous interviews and just stepping on a rake like every time he opened his mouth, to the point where he just didn't talk like publicly for a couple of years, because it was such a disaster every time. All I heard from the inside baseball people at USA Swimming is, oh, he's so amazing. He's the most amazing leader ever. He's like, where would we be without Chuck? And I was like thinking, like, we're living in two completely different worlds. And there's this tiny, tiny little world where he's amazing and everything he's doing is amazing. And none of us really know what that means. Maybe it's true, right? But we're not shown any evidence that it's true. We're just supposed to believe that the Wizard of Oz is back there and he's amazing, and I just don't get it. And I guess color me, as usual, cynical that suddenly that's going to change, and we'll see something like that, because I would love to see something like that.
I actually have a thought on that.
Okay.
So I think that part of the issue with all of this is that we have people in positions. This goes back to what I was talking about earlier. We have people in positions where, you know, they've done something really, really good. And when you look at what Chuck did, he was an incredibly effective marketer. And there is no doubt, if you look at how USA Swimming thrived with their exposure, that also coincided with Michael Phelps and some other things. They knew what they had, but more importantly, they knew what to do with it. And you see that all the time where people are given these things where it's like, oh my God, how could you fail with this? And they fail. Chuck didn't fail. He didn't fail with Michael Phelps. They understood what they had and they made the most of it. But, you know, when you're talking, I kind of hear, it's like people hate Neville Chamberlain. They're like, well, why didn't he understand what to do with the Nazis? Well, how could he? They're the Nazis. They didn't know. Yeah. So if
all your existing strategies would not work.
Well, but think about this. So you get, they bring in somebody who's a clear racist. I mean, you go back and you look at Winston Churchill, not the greatest person in the world. But
this is what people listen to this podcast for, John. They want to know Winston Churchill history and revisionist takes on Neville Chamberlain. This is what they want. No, I'm just teasing you. It's great.
But the point is that we don't choose the moments choose us. And sometimes we're in the right place at the right time. Sometimes we're in the wrong place at the wrong time. And, you know, I can't think of too many leaders who would have been in a position in 2011 to understand how to effectively handle all of the different pieces to that puzzle. I mean, it's easy for me to say, oh yeah, well, you just fire all the coaches who are involved here and you sue everybody. You have to look at it in the frame of time that it was in. And I'm not defending anybody who's saying it. I'm just saying it's a slippery slope if we're going to go back and judge people. I think the broader piece is it goes back to, okay, what are the roles and responsibilities? And that's that communication piece I was talking about earlier. Who's responsible for what? What are they trying to do? And how are they going to do it? And then you judge them on the effectiveness of that approach. That's clearly not happening. And I think that's what people need to look at as we go forward. And maybe that's what this referendum is about, saying, look, you got to do a better job of showing us the roadmap and telling us how we're going to get there. And if you do that, a lot of this stuff takes care of itself. If you don't, we're stuck, you know? And I think we just keep repeating these problems.
I think we have two board members, you know, that's why they actually wanted to be on the board. And I really am very optimistic about that, but I'm optimistic that process will actually happen. What I'm not as optimistic about yet is like, okay, does that actually resort in somewhat of a course correction when it comes to leadership communication to the field, as in what is going on, what is the vision, you know?
That's a great point. So, you know, we keep talking about accountability. Okay, what does that mean for the new board members? If Clark and Ira get on there and nothing changes, how do you hold them accountable?
Right.
Or should they even be held accountable? What, you know, what kind of lens are we looking through here? And again, I think that would actually be a pretty interesting topic is, okay, we don't even know what we're trying to do, and we're hoping that these people are going to do it. Okay, well, maybe we should set some metrics as to these are the things we're clearly trying to do. How are we going to affect change? And they can determine that. But if 2 years from now, nothing's changed and the excuse is, well, it's too big to fail or whatever, you know, is that really good enough? No. But if things don't change, I'm not sure that USA Swimming is going to resemble what it is today. I don't see it because I think a lot of members will leave because they're dissatisfied.
But I think it goes a long way. It went a really long way for me. Clark reached out to me. I looked at the timestamp. Saturday after the election.
Okay.
It was 7:45 Central. And he wasn't in Colorado Springs or wherever he was at the bar partying with anybody. He was obviously sending emails out to people. And all he asked me was, when can you get on a call to talk about grassroots? And I was sitting at my computer and I right away wrote back and I said, as soon as possible. Thank you for reaching out. And he called me Monday morning. And we talked for over an hour and he listened. He asked me a lot of questions, but he mostly listened. And that is the first time since I've been in the position that I'm in with Gulf Swimming that anybody on the board has reached out to me. And it's also, there's only one other person that, and it's Joel Schinnefeld, who I talk to on a regular basis, that asks me what's going on.
Yeah.
Other than that, that's it. No one else. And this shouldn't be a shocking development. You know what I mean? It's like, this is the kind of stuff that should be happening on a regular basis. The fact that this is a shocking development is literally the problem, right? But it gives me hope, and I have an open mind and an open heart going forward to hopefully see things start evolving in a direction that we all need it to evolve in.
Yeah.
So
let me ask you this. So I work for a school district, and within our school district, we have a superintendent, we have multiple schools, they're all run by principals, this and that and the other thing. And there's a very clear understanding of what everyone's roles and responsibilities are. Okay. If the fact that Joel is calling Julie, to me, makes a lot of sense, because that's his job. I mean, that's what he's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Who else should be calling Julie? Because I'm not sure that that's their job. And maybe that's part of this dissatisfaction piece as well, is that people understand what people's jobs are, or maybe the message gets muddled. And I think part of that issue is because you always see people on these different projects. Shayna Ferguson is awesome. I used to love working with Shayna and talking to her. But I think if you asked your typical coach, well, what does Shayna do for USA Swimming? They wouldn't know. And they may know some of the things, they might have noticed that she was really involved in the return to pools and helping coordinate that and the lobbying efforts and these and that. But I don't think they know what the day-to-day is.
Right.
Most people in my school district, they don't really know what the people who do their jobs do, but they know who the people are who they need to talk to when their kids are involved. And I think that's part of the issue here, is nobody knows who to talk to. And as far as sport development staff, there aren't a lot of them left anymore.
Right.
Most of those people,
the place has been gutted. Yeah.
Right. Which, when you look at, and I think this is a source of some of the anger, when you look at how we are a membership driven organization where on average 62% of the money is coming from members. Okay, how much that money is coming from kids who are 17 and younger? And are those, and would we consider those kids the ones who are steering the ship? I would argue that their parents are the ones who are paying for it. Are we listening to them and their concerns? Do we really know what these people and these families want? Right. And maybe if you knew that, you could have a membership drive and tailor your product to get more people in the pools. I'm not even sure we know what our capacity is nationally for what a realistic number is. No. And if you don't know those metrics, you're shooting in the dark, and you're just kind of taking the shotgun approach of, well, we're going to try to get more people here. We're going to try to go. You need to know what those numbers are and what's realistic. You got to know. If you don't know, good luck.
Yeah, I mean, those are all really good questions. Anything else from the state of sport, or you want to? My time clock on the Mike Unger news is ticking down. So,
well, I got one other thing about.
Yeah, let's do it.
These virtual
make them wait.
These virtual House of Delegates meetings suck, because the thing that makes a good House of Delegates is when you can talk to people, and you're not side texting or going to some breakout room or whatever it is. You're physically talking to somebody about something that's happening live. You're you're able to engage those people and say, hey, how do you feel about this? Or, hey, can you explain where you're coming from on this? And part of the reason these things are so painful is nobody gets to do that. So I, for one, am looking forward to getting back to some sort of a broader, where we can actually meet thing, because I think these virtual houses have stymied our growth as an organization as well. I think they make it really difficult for people to understand really what's going on. And quite frankly, we've been doing this for 2 years now. I'm not getting real excited about being on another Zoom call. Enough.
I think you speak for everybody in the world, John.
So
with that one,
that's all I got.
Yeah, I hear you on that. It is, it sounds painful to be a part of, as I listen to it. And, yeah, I mean, I have,
Guys, it's sometimes I think about this and I'm like, is this really though, just given all the circumstances, the best they can do? Is that where we're at?
you mean a virtual session?
Everything. Like, because there are some talented people there. And that's what I still, and I know I've said this before on our podcast, I don't understand this.
Yeah.
I really don't.
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
that's what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to do here on this podcast. We're trying to figure it out. Because maybe there's not enough people trying to figure it out. But I do agree with you. I mean, you referenced Joel earlier. It's a person that I have a lot of personal admiration for. And yet, even in what I understand is his department, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't work. And I don't really understand why.
Here's why. Here's part of it. Okay. I think, the expectations versus reality, right? The whole concept of when you have expectations. So we have a bunch of expectations that just can't ever be fulfilled.
Don't tell me that. Don't tell me that.
Well, because I think the needs that we have at the grassroots, there are not the right skill sets at USA Swimming to address those needs.
Right.
Plain and simple.
Yeah.
We USA Swimming continues to signal that the most important thing is to get kids on the national team. And they have a lot of people that are really talented at working with clubs to check that box. What they don't have are people to come in and help when we have mental health crisis, or when parents are acting like crazy people, or when we're trying to figure out, how to have a better relationship with our, the owners of our pools, or back to this mental health thing. This is a weekly issue for me of dealing with coaches in mental health crisis. And I'm saying with a capital C. It's bad. And maybe USA Swimming isn't supposed to fix that, but guess what? I feel like I'm not doing my job if I'm not trying to figure out how to provide resources for that. And there are very few resources just in general in the world for people who are in mental health crisis, let alone my coaches who have the guts to pick up the phone and call me and say, Julie, literally, I tried to kill myself last night. This happened last week to me. And I didn't have any way of really helping this person. And I'm still reeling from it because I feel like a failure. I'm still trying to figure out how to solve it. This is a head coach. And a lot of the reasons behind the stress have to do with the operation of the swim team. So that's what I'm trying to help with. And I don't mean to, this is it's a heady thing, but this is happening.
Yep.
Chris, you and I have talked about our mental health. Mm-hmm. JB, we've done it.
Something I'm pretty open with on this podcast. Yeah.
We are all dealing with this. And again, I don't know if this is whose responsibility it is, but I think it's a collective responsibility. And you know, there's a lot of things behind it that we could do to alleviate pressure. If we don't start alleviating pressure on our coaches that make zero money anyway, if we don't start fixing that or diving into it, or how about just acknowledge it?
Yeah.
Then we've already got coaches dropping out. Have you tried to go recruit new coaches?
It's
Onto
so hard. It's so
people
hard.
don't. I mean,
Everybody this last year that I talked to that was hiring for something had a hell of a time.
Right.
Filling.
So we're talking about capacity. It's not
Right.
just capacity of like pool availability. It's
capacity
how
of
many
people to-
coaches do we have? Right,
to work with
JB?
them. Yeah,
He's nodding.
for sure.
I mean, I'm just asking, like, whose responsibility is this?
Yeah.
Is it ASCA? When's the last time ASCA has done a effing thing for a coach? Honestly.
Well, and so go back to the beginning of this, where I said, what's the plan? And I think that it would be advantageous for people to figure out, okay, here are the issues. We have these human resource issues. We need to try to come up with a way to help people with this problem. We're having hiring and retention issues. We need to come up with a way to do that. Maybe this new coach program that USA Swimming is putting together is going to be helpful. I don't know. I haven't seen it, but I know a lot of coaches have worked on it, and I respect a lot of the coaches who have worked on it. So there's that piece. But again, articulate what the plan is, and once the plan's articulated, follow up on it and show us your progress and let us know. And I think that would go a long way to solving the transparency piece, and it would restore confidence in both staff and leadership to help people get through this thing.
Right.
Again, my opinion.
All right. Let's put a button on that. Of course, in the course of recording this, I did find out that we're not breaking this news because the only true journalist in swimming, Craig Lord, has already reported that Mike Unger is leaving USA Swimming and he's going to work at FINA. And we have a bunch of different perspectives on this. I, of course, said before we were recording that was the only place that Mike Unger could be more overpaid. John, you have a different opinion. You actually believe that Mike Unger is underpaid. Give me your elevator pitch for what this move that with Mike Unger leaving USA Swimming means.
I think they're going to have to do some hiring because, when we talked about this a little bit earlier, I can't think of a group of 3 people that can replace Mike. I really can't. Mike is, I think, to many of our high-level athletes, a mentor. I think he's somebody who is very highly respected. He's a person who has incredible people skills, and he has a lot of technical knowledge. And he also knows all the players. When you have somebody like that, who's, that kind of, I throw out these nicknames, we'll call him the shaman. I mean, he's basically the shaman of international swimming for the United States because he understands who all these people are. And that's the piece that I think is going to be the hardest to replace. Then there's the TV side and the media side, which, Mike has won Emmy Awards for his work with Olympic trials and Olympics. He's respected. He understands that world. And then on top of it, he's got, I think he was working for USA Swimming in the early 90s. So he's been there for a long time, 20, high 20, low 30 years. At some point, you have to acknowledge that the guy knows what he's doing. And replicating that is going to be incredibly challenging for USA Swimming. Because I do think that swimming, it's not, well, I shouldn't say this. Replicating that is going to be hard because I just don't think USA Swimming necessarily, or swimming in general, necessarily works like typical pro sports or things like that. It's a much different ballgame. And whenever you're dealing with international players, it's always weird because you have no idea what their cultures are. So good luck, everybody. It's going to be a tough one to replace.
Counterpoint. Find me some organizations. If I look back again at the pie charts of doom here, find me an organization, a nonprofit with, by their own estimate, $35 million of revenue on average per year that pays their not the boss, not the CEO, in excess of $600,000 a year to do their job.
I'm pretty sure I could find that pretty easily.
Okay.
I actually think that,
Like in sports, how about in sports? How about some athletic departments that are,
well, I don't think you want to go there, because aren't most universities nonprofit?
for
And
sure.
aren't generally for states, the highest paid employee in most states is generally the football or the basketball coach.
Well, set aside the football or basketball coach. Like
Talking about NGDs, Chris? What are you talking about?
to me, this is like his job is comparable to being an associate athletic director.
But it's
And-
not. It's not, because an associate AD and again, in looking at roles and responsibilities, the AD is responsible for all programs, and generally associates handle revenue sports, non-revenue sports. They deal with all kinds of different issues. His knowledge is so specific and so focused. Again, the only other person I know of who is like him is Dale Newberger. And I think the guy named Dale Newberger, who is, it works out of Indiana, who knows a ton about this stuff. But again, there are so many different federation divisions. He's not going to be an easy person to replace. And I don't think you can look at it strictly financially. I think there's a lot going on there that's going to make it difficult.
This is a tough counterpoint, Chris.
The tough counterpoint to
It
make.
is.
I don't
I
meet
mean,
a
it
lot
is-
of people. Look, I'm not a fan of Mike Unger. I will admit, I don't meet a lot of people who go like, yeah, F that guy. Like most of the people that I meet are, again, actually are fans of Mike Unger. They think he's done a really good job. So I'm willing to concede that it's not a popular opinion, but
We're all entitled to our opinions.
You can think I'm delusional all you want. I think we could probably find somebody great to do Mike Unger's job for half of what he's paid. So
I don't think it's about necessarily being delusional or not. I've been doing this for a long time, and Mike has seen it all. And I generally, when I think of different people who do these jobs, they're easier jobs to do. I mean, if you're talking about, and no disrespect meant to CFOs across the country, generally CFO job is fairly well defined and it's understood, so you kind of roll from different position to different position based on what your industry that you're involved in is. But his position is so weird and so unique. I just think it's going to be hard. And I think that part of the reason why he's so successful is exactly what you pointed out. Mike is truly a good person who follows up with you. There aren't a lot of people who are like, yeah, that Unger, he doesn't get back. Mike gets back to you and he knows who you are and he follows up.
He's the only salesperson at USA Swimming.
That's a great point. That's it right there. He gets that piece. And again, you look at, without going into too much detail, I mean, I believe Mike's father was one of the guys who was in charge of the Meadowlands at one point, in terms of booking acts. The guy, he just knows entertainment. And there aren't a lot of people like that.
Are you saying he's mob?
No, oh God. God, I hope not.
Are you saying he's got mob ties?
No.
We're talking about Northern New Jersey now, my guy.
Hey,
No.
you guys, you can be nice to New Jersey, okay? It's a fine
but
state.
Again, I'm not trying to, I don't think Mike needs any defense. I just think that his position is going to be a hard one to fill, and it will be interesting to see who gets locked up to do it and what their experience level is, because that's when we're going to know, to your point, Chris, okay, what is it going to cost and who can do the job and what are the parameters of that job? Because that's, I don't even know that, but it'll be fun to watch. So get out the popcorn. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. A lot of changes afoot. All right, guys, I think we'll put a box around it there. Thank you so much for coming on to discuss all this and for sharing your perspectives and even where we disagree. I think I learned a lot as usual from listening to this, and I hope people that listen to it learn a lot as well. Thanks to everybody for listening, and I'll be back later this week to discuss all the inane topics with Joel and Eric, like, Shane Casas going pro, and oh gosh, was there any other big news? I think there was something out in Southern California, but I don't know. We'll get to that.
Isn't somebody going to Florida? Isn't that's something new?
We did that last week. We did
Oh,
that one already.
so I gotta stay up on what's going on.
Yeah. Well, we'll be discussing this is a preview for everybody. We'll be discussing Brett Hawk's arms. If you get on YouTube and watch him interviewing Eddie Reese, just check out Brett Hawk's arms. It's going to be a big topic on Friday. I think that everybody in swimming needs to know more about. All right. Thank you guys. And I'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Chris.